another classic Falcons season of one not finishing above 500 for the 8th straight year, and I'll get back to that later. Choked games, winning games against really good teams that you probably shouldn't win, just blowout losses against teams that even if like maybe losing to them isn't bad, there's no reason like for example the Panthers should be blowing you out how they did, stuff like that, and that leads to them firing their head coach. And before I get into their new coaching hires, I'll start with the 2025 team MVP and the 2025 team unsung hero. Team MVP Bijan Robinson, the easiest one I've done so far, I'd argue. Well, I've done the Browns. I feel like that one was also very easy, so maybe I won't say easiest I've done so far.
I can't even remember what other teams we have done. I do feel like we've had some easy ones, but
yeah,
that one was
This is definitely one of the easier ones. I would argue the best running back in football. He's a joy to watch. Horns down, though. It's obligatory. I'm an A&M fan, but he's special, the bright spot of that team. And then my 2025 unsung, their defense honestly was pretty solid this past year. Their offense, outside of like the kind of star power, no one really performed that well, I'd argue. Kyle Pitts is a known name. He had a pretty solid season. Drake London was great. Everyone knows Drake London. I just mentioned Bijan Robinson. Defense, you had a lot of young players contribute, some rookies. But I gave it to Divine Diablo, linebacker. Had a good season. Held down the middle of that defense pretty well. Nothing like spectacular. But a kind of a name that flew under the radar. I feel like the rookies really got most of the love there in terms of like Xavier Watts, James Pierce, Jalen Walker, guys like that. So I just wanted to give him a shout. Do you have any unsung?
I would have just said James Pierce, and
Sure.
to highlight the year that he had, and I don't think people really realized it, in which he had 10.5 sacks.
I think I'm too much on Falcons Twitter because I'm a Braves fan.
Yeah.
And so like I follow some Braves fans, and so I saw a ton about how good of a season he had. But he probably does deserve a shout. They got a lot of criticism for moving up and picking him. And it's turned out so far to work pretty well.
I don't know. I think that's up for debate. I think they'd rather potentially have this 13th pick in the draft.
I probably would rather have it, but considering how harsh I was on it when we recapped the draft, they at least got a really good player. Like they didn't trade up because they traded up to get a guy that had character concerns, and you didn't know if it was going to work out. At least he worked out. Yeah, maybe the value wasn't there. With that being said, we can go and move on to the 2026 season. In this offseason, fired Raheem Morris, and then went and hired Kevin Stefanski, former Browns coach. They went and get him. Y'all's thoughts on the hire?
I mean, I think it was kind of – it'll be viewed as a good hire, and I think on paper it should be viewed that way, given everything that occurred in Cleveland. At least right now, if we were to make a blame pie, we're making a pizza pie. 8 slices, 7 of the slices they're putting on the GM and the owner.
Sure.
Or maybe 6 of the slices, and the 7th slice they're putting on the fact that we're just the Cleveland Browns and we're cursed. 8th slice maybe then is Kevin Stefanski.
Sure.
Yeah.
But on top of that, he played a part in a lot of the moves offensively. He was a part of the Baker. I mean, for Baker to describe his relationship with Kevin as in we haven't talked in years, and essentially he's excited to play him twice a year so he can just rub it in his face. It feels like Kevin Stefanski was a part of the Baker Mayfield releasing, or at least letting him walk. And that's obviously missed as Baker's rejuvenated his career in Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I do think I expect more of the same with him in Atlanta. Like, you talk to the 8 straight losing seasons. I don't expect them to have a winning season next year because they're just an incompetent franchise, and that's full hate, a lot of biased hate there.
Sure.
But they do not make the right moves. They don't have a quarterback of the future, and they were the team that 2 years ago spent all the money on Kirk Cousins, then drafted Michael Penix at 8. Now Penix is going to come off an ACL injury, and Kirk Cousins is, he's 38, if I'm not mistaken.
A lot of people expect him to be released as well.
Absolutely. So they don't have an answer at quarterback, and that's they haven't had an answer since Matt Ryan left.
They brought Matt Ryan back.
And so what does that kind of sound like? That sounds
Sure.
like the Cleveland Browns. They didn't have an answer at quarterback, and that really significantly hindered them. They have great weapons in Bajan and Drake London and Kyle Pitts with the year he had, but Kyle Pitts had that year, and now he's going to get paid because of that year. Well, the numbers say he's due to have one of his other years instead
Sure.
of the year he had this year, I would argue personally. So I don't expect it to be like a home run hire. Where I was fearful in their coaching search was it what if they were to get the known commodities in Mike Tomlin or John Harbaugh, and they were able to become, what Mike Vrabel did this year.
Yeah.
And a guy that was casted away by his franchise for whatever reason. Harbaugh and Tomlin, it was because they hadn't won in a while. Vrabel was for who knows what reason. They had shown success in the past and then could take them forward from there. I don't know if Stefanski will be that for them. But I will say it is a lot better than Raheem Morris.
Almost anything is a lot better than Raheem Morris. I'm fine with the hire. He's not like the best name, but where they were in the pecking order of open jobs, I think they got a guy that's on par with where they were in that pecking order. And then in terms of his coordinator moves, keep Jeff Ulbrich in house, the DC, and then brings over Tommy Rees from the Browns, who's a young OC, only had 1 year at the Browns, being their offensive coordinator. He was there for a couple years. And it's not like he had good toys or like weapons to work with. So it's kind of to be determined on if he's a good OC or not. I guess we're about to find out. But that's what they did on the coaching side of things in terms of their draft situation. They have no first-round pick, as we established. They traded it last year to the Rams to trade up and get James Pierce. James Pierce ended up being a fine player, but they didn't really win very many games, so they would be picking at 13th, like JP said, so maybe not quite worth it. Not up for me to decide. It's at this point, like, that's water under the bridge. This is what we're trying to look ahead here, I guess is what I'm saying. So their first pick is 48th overall. A couple of needs. They could use some interior defensive line help. Maybe like a Lee Hunter from Texas Tech. Dominique Orange from Iowa State could be there. Dante Corleone, the Godfather, from Cincinnati, potentially at that spot, something like that. I've also toyed with the idea of receiver here, depending on if there's someone they love. So they have Drake London. Mm-hmm. We don't know if they're going to bring back Kyle Pitts, he's a receiving threat. Like he operates kind of in the same sphere as a wide receiver. He had a big year, but he's going to have to get paid. Darnell Mooney is supposed to be kind of the wide receiver too, but he had under 500 yards last season. Just has not really produced how they'd expect. He only has one more year on his deal. So if they feel like they really want to surround Penix with weapons, or whoever ends up being the QB with weapons, maybe they look wide receiver here. They could also maybe go and look to get another cornerback 2, Keontae Scott, somebody like that here. What do y'all think they'll do with their first pick? It's weird because they don't have a first-round draft pick, so a lot of it will probably dictate how the board falls and stuff like that.
Yeah, so it's 48, right?
Yes.
I was reading that right. Cool. I'm just looking through. That's I feel like a bad spot to get wide receiver. Because at that point you're talking about like a Jeremy Bernard, right? Or maybe you're reaching on Elijah Surratt, who right now PFF has ranked as the 66th best prospect. So I feel like 48 is not a great spot.
It all depends on how they look at players.
Correct.
And how much big of a need they deem it to be. Because I agree, it maybe isn't the best spot, and you're not going to get somebody that's like a guaranteed difference maker. So at that point, is it really worth it in the second round, or do you wait?
Obviously, they would not go edge rusher. And their offensive line, it was good 2 years ago. Was it good again this year?
Well, they had the injuries.
Okay.
They lost their right tackle. Had a season-ending injury, I think in preseason, or maybe like very early in the season.
Okay.
But I think it's still in pretty good shape.
And then you're not going to go... They probably wouldn't go cornerback. I know they've still got Terrell there, right? AJ Terrell there.
Yes.
Yeah, they've been rumored to be looking to lock down the other side of the field, find a cornerback too, which is why I mentioned Keontae Scott.
Yeah.
Colton Hood from Tennessee could be an option at this spot.
Was Pons not a safety?
No, he's a corner, but he
Okay.
played a lot of like nickel and stuff. He's 5'9",
Okay.
so
okay.
he just kind of he moved around a little bit, but
Yeah, I think secondary could be a good move. I wouldn't hate that at all to go corner there, and do that to address the other side because you just invested on the defensive line. I think that you should feel good about the offensive line if it is going to get back to the form it was 2 years ago when you felt good about it coming into this year. You're good at running back. I think you can like you've got Drake London, Kyle Pitts, and then Darnell Mooney, who he had a down year this year, but the quarterback situation with Penix getting hurt was not ideal. Like I think you can convince yourself that you have the weapons in that room necessary, and so then you look to the other side of the ball, and I think secondary is a good place to go. So I don't hate corner there.
Thoughts?
I would draft defense.
Yeah.
They already showed last year that they can find. Now both were first rounders, and first rounders are a lot easier to pick, but they found pieces to add to this defense and make it younger. And so I think they would just draft best available defensively, even if it was another edge rusher.
There's no way they would
have
spend their top 2 picks and then their 3rd pick this year all on edge rusher.
Why not? Jalen Walker has shown ability to play outside linebacker or Mike linebacker for them, and if you went to a 3-4 system, that would work plenty fine. He's also, like I said, he's played Mike before. I think James Pierce has enough physical ability to play linebacker as well. So I wouldn't hate the move whatsoever, even if it's an edge defender. I wouldn't hate it. Why? There's no reason to not have more pass rushers, and so if one's there, take them. You have teams like Seattle. Seattle didn't have one pass rusher. They have 5, 6 guys who get after the quarterback, and Nwosu and DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams in the middle. They have plenty of pieces to go to, so I wouldn't hate it. I think you would go defense because you're going to pay Kyle Pitts already, more than likely. I would assume they do.
I think
and you have
bring it back.
You have a 3-tiered weapon on the offensive side of the ball, and Bijan, Drake London, and Kyle Pitts. Figure out your quarterback. I would add another defensive piece and try to get better there defensively.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I think if I had my way, I would find they'd take an interior defensive lineman, a Lee Hunter, like I said, a Dante Corleone, somebody of that ilk. I would love that personally.
The common phrase is, it's cliche, but defense wins championships, and it 100% was shown this postseason with the teams that were there at the end, and the teams that made the postseason in general. Jacksonville was a top 10 defense. The Chargers were a top 10 defense. Houston, of course, Seattle, Denver were 3 of the best teams in the league. I would go after defense. So much of the NFC still kind of is, we want to have the best roster and not necessarily the best quarterback. The AFC still seems to be driven as the more have the best quarterback. Even with Drake May being his second year, he's might be the MVP tonight. We'll find out.
Yeah.
So in the NFC, it's all about roster, and you see Seattle's roster. It's a elite roster up and down the board. I think you'd try to add to your roster more so than try to add to your offense. So go defense for me personally.
Yeah.
The biggest thing I'm disappointed about is that they don't have a first-round pick, and we can't bring in our resident Falcons fan on draft night.
No
maybe
Thomas
we can.
this
Maybe
year.
we get him like in the 5 minutes before the draft starts and just reflect on last year's pick, because you spent this year's pick last year. How are you feeling now?
Yeah.
That you've got a year under
Sure.
the belt. Honestly, maybe that's to the Falcons' advantage. The Falcon fans' advantage. They already know what this year's pick is.
That's the spin zone they'll give themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and then the other way they can add to this team is obviously free agency. Cap situation, they have $28 million cap space, which is honestly pretty solid. Now, we've already talked about we expect a large portion of that to go right back to Kyle Pitts because he's expected to get a pretty hefty payday. Now, they could release Kirk Cousins, make some money back. Obviously, there's restructuring they can do. But realistically, it's probably going to be bringing back Kyle Pitts, some depth pieces in terms of, defensive linemen. Maybe you don't draft a defensive lineman in the second round like I want, and you go sign somebody to fill that role. You go get another cornerback. You go snag a linebacker or something like that. I don't see them being anyone that, like, a team that makes crazy splashy moves in free agency personally. But, yeah, any thoughts there? Can I keep it rolling?
I'd re-sign Kyle Pitts.
Sure.
I think the big problem with it, of course, is the way he played this year. The price tag is going to be up there, which kind of sucks, but he's still very young. I mean, that was one of his biggest – that was one of the traits of him as a draft prospect.
Yeah.
He was just barely 21 when he was coming into the NFL, and so he's sitting here at 25 still, with many years ahead of him, and he just had his best year. So I think that's the priority, and then the Kirk Cousins contract situation. If you're going to release him, do it when you can save the most money and just eat the cap, or look to potentially trade him, because I do think he's got some trade value, and you can get a 5th round pick, and that could help.
It's better than releasing him and cutting him. So
one thing about draft picks is it's not just you. Sometimes you want to have some late round picks or just picks in general because it's better. It can be better than free agency because when you pick a guy in the 5th round, you get the guy on a 4-year, $1.3 million contract each of the 4 years, rather than having to sign a free agent. And some of the cheapest free agents, if they're going to get a cheap contract, they want to sign for just 1 year. So if they pop and they can get another contract the next year for 2, their prices are $3 million, $4 million every single year that you sign them for. So having draft picks is a good thing to have. It's not a bad problem whatsoever.
And there are guys in those 5th and 6th rounds, and it's more of a volume shooting situation than some GMs just identify talent and hit 100% or 80%. Most guys aren't going to hit that at that high rate.
Sure.
And so if you have 2 5th rounds as opposed to 1 5th round, you just doubled your chances of hitting on a guy in the 5th round. So
sure.
Yep. Well, then, last thing, 2026 goal. We've already talked about 8 straight losing seasons. I think their goal should be to end that streak. I mean, you were right on the doorstep this past year. And then, I mean, obviously it didn't happen, but so theoretically it should not be that unrealistic of a goal to win one more game, to go from 8-9 to 9-8. You are going to figure out quarterback situation. You know, if you release Kirk Cousins, maybe it is Malik Willis like they want, and then or maybe Michael Penix is back and healthy and ready to roll pretty quickly into the season. But that is going to be a large kind of puzzle piece in terms of them hitting that goal. But y'all think that's like a fair goal for them to have?
No.
No?
I think it's too tall of a task. Their schedule is really, really tough next year. They, in classic Falcons fashion, caught the year where finishing 3rd in the division actually hurt the crap out of them, because the 3 third-place teams they play are the Kansas City Chiefs, the San Francisco 49ers, and your Commanders, who we all expect them to all rebound next year. And San Francisco is 1 game from the 1 seed. So great draw there. On top of that, they have to play – every NFC South team does, but they have to play the NFC North. So Bears, Lions, Vikings, Packers, that was the best division in football from win record perspective, are right there with the NFC West. And then still they will play the AFC North as well, so Ravens, Bengals. I'm going to be, I think if anything, like early realistic goal is figure out what quarterback is going to be in terms of what are you going to decide next offseason. Is Penix the guy? So whenever he comes back, play
if they take his 5th-year contract, it'd be at the end of this season.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to know what they're going to do about that.
Yeah, they play him with Stefanski. Does Stefanski like him? If no, are we going for a free agent next year or drafting somebody? I do think they have the pieces enough to be competitive, and no Falcons team is not going to win games they're never supposed to, like they did this year. You know, beating the Los Angeles Rams and beating the Buffalo Bills both on Monday Night Football. But this is, I think you need to figure out quarterback, because the last 4 years, their leading passers the last 4 years, Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins, Desmond Ridder, Marcus Mariota. And then before that was Matt Ryan. So they need to find out who their quarterback is going to be the future. That might be still Penix. I still believe in him, and he had some bright moments. Last year, he just unfortunately tore his ACL again. He had another knee injury. That's hard to deal with. So I think that's more so the realistic goal, is figure that out. I think they will convince themselves that they can win the division, because the team that won the division finished 8-10 this year as their total record, and 8-9 in the regular season. So I think that'll be like a delusional goal, but they have a stupid tough schedule. next year, and a stupid tough home schedule as well. Like, you're supposed to get your wins at home, and you host the Chiefs, you host the Niners, you host the Bears, you host the Lions, you host Lamar Jackson, you host Joe Burrow, which is great for me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a Falcons season ticket holder next
Cinema.
year. So I can't wait to go to some of those games and then probably make all of my money back as well, selling some of these tickets for Lamar, Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Caleb Williams, all those teams.
That's just
So
tough because those are the ones you're going to want to go to.
I'm going to the Saints game. I know that for sure, and then I'll probably pick 2 or 3 more. But I don't think I can, justify making the trip 8 out of 16 weekends, or they play 9 home games.
For sure.
But it'll be easy to sell
you
tickets
pass-
and get the money back.
Passing the 49ers game.
I'm passing on that in the Chiefs game more than likely.
Really?
I don't want to see Mahomes.
That's fair. That's fair. I think I would agree
And
with
that'll
that.
make
I would
the
much
most
rather
money.
see Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I enjoyed my Mahomes experience.
I think right now, the top of my
Happy
list
for
would
you.
be the Saints, of course. I'll be at that game probably regardless. And then Caleb Williams.
Well, you've seen a Saints game. You've seen Tyler Shuck in person already, right?
I haven't.
Really?
No.
Cool. That'll be big for you.
I did not go to the Saints game at the end of the year this year. And then I think Chicago with Caleb Williams is pretty high on that list.
Yeah.
But do you agree with his realistic goal? Back on track.
I would say I think it is a realistic goal. I think that they could very easily fall short of it. I don't think it's unattainable.
That is
Just
what
because
that is what their goal is in house. Is
they're in-house. They want to be above 500 because you play in the division that just put a team that was below 500 in the playoffs. I think that you want that to be your goal. And maybe the Falcons are like us, and they don't like Bryce Young, and they think that he's not going to, be able to win the NFC South next year. And maybe they don't, and they think that the Buccaneers are too old. And maybe, I think that maybe they're telling themselves, oh, well, this is our opportunity, to a phoenix from the ashes to go from third to first. So yeah, I think that's their in-house goal, and I think it's a goal that makes sense because you want to set goals that you have to work hard for. I feel like the quarterback thing is gonna hopefully it just happens organically, right? Because you either play Penix comes back and he's healthy and he plays well with Stefanski, or he doesn't. And then Kirk Cousins is still around, or those are things that they need to do. But I feel like that shouldn't be their goal because they aren't one of those teams where I feel like their entire season should be around figuring out quarterback because they have other pieces on that roster that are in positions to succeed.
I mean, I just think if their goal is to go above 500 or win the division, naturally for them to reach that goal, the QB position is going to figure itself out. They kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, it's definitely not that being their goal. It is them hoping for a 80th percentile season outcome, 85th percentile season outcome.
I think if there was another goal, it'd be how can we get rid of the
stench?
Unbelievable hot and cold.
Consistency is something I was going to mention as well.
It is to get blown out by the Panthers and blown out by Tua and the Dolphins, and it's 6-all with the team that I think is going to win the Super Bowl on Sunday at home, and you give up 31 points in the second half. To the reason you aren't hosting a first-round playoff game and don't have a winning record is because you lost to the New York Jets.
Gosh, I forgot they lost to the Jets.
That was the reason they win that game. They win the division.
Yeah,
because they're 9-8, and the other two teams are 8-9. To lose back-to-back weeks in devastating fashion in overtime, once in Germany, then the following week to Bryce Young at home, to lose by a point to the team that also is playing in the Super Bowl on Sunday, the Patriots. But then couple it with winning 4 in a row at the end of the year for no reason. I guess it helps because you don't have your first-round pick, but winning 4 in a row and beating the Rams and Bills both on Monday Night Football, and after both of those games, because they're standalone primetime games, people are saying, oh, the Falcons could be a problem. No, they can't, because they get in their own way.
I was going to say they can be a problem. They're just a problem to themselves.
Yeah.
That would be something if I was a Falcons fan, and even just for my own buddy's sake, I would I wouldn't wish this kind of hot and cold season, which is now it's been that way for 4 years in a row, on anyone, because it's so brutal to watch.
My last goal is trade back up into the first round so we can get our Falcons fan on the phone.
That would be electric.
Trade back into like pick 30, 31 or something. I don't know. Just sneak back in there.
Spontaneous.
Patriots don't need their first round pick. Patriots they feel like a second and third round kind of team anyway. I feel like that's where they really do their best work. So yeah, trade back up into that first round and go get somebody so we can get a Falcons fan on the phone.